My name is Rachel Carter. I'm 42 years old, a senior lecturer in business administration at a university in Boston. For 15 years, I thought my marriage was unshakable. We had a beautiful home in the suburbs, a well-trained golden retriever, Summer. Vacations that looked perfect on Instagram. People used to tell us we were the kind of couple they aspired to be. I believed that too, until the night my husband's phone lit up with a message that shattered my world in one heartbeat. Dinner reservation confirmed for 7:30 p.m., window seat, Friday. At first, I thought it was for us. We'd always dreamed of going to that place. A Michelin-starred spot we talked about on every anniversary but never made time for. But when I saw the name on the message chain, my stomach dropped. It wasn't me he was taking, it was someone else. Someone younger, shinier, and new. I stood there gripping his phone, feeling like the air had been sucked out of the room. But I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I didn't even confront him. Not yet. Instead, I let the anger settle into something colder, sharper. I made a plan. If Mark wanted a romantic night with his mistress, I would let him have it. But he wouldn't be the only one enjoying the show. I reserved the table right next to his and brought her husband with me. I barely slept that night. Mark lay beside me, breathing steady, completely unaware that our entire marriage had just cracked open. I stared at the ceiling, playing back every moment that suddenly made sense now. The late nights at the office, the business trips, the way he'd started flinching when I touched him, or how he avoided eye contact just a little too often. It was all there, hidden in plain sight, and I had been too trusting or too blind to see it. The next morning, over coffee, he kissed me. On the cheek like everything was normal. Big day today, he said with a smile, meeting with the Japanese clients. I smiled back, feeling my insides twist. Good luck, babe, I replied, my voice calm, almost mechanical. He left for work, briefcase, in hand, oblivious. The moment the door closed behind him, felt the full weight of it all hit me. But instead of falling apart, I did something else. I opened my laptop. I found the name of the woman, Sabrina Mitchell, a communications manager at the law firm where Mark was a partner. It took me less than 10 minutes to track down her social media profiles. Perfect smile, perfect hair, perfect captions. Feeling blessed, her latest post said, with a photo that made me sick to my stomach. But I wasn't interested in Sabrina. I wanted to find someone else, her husband. His name was Daniel Mitchell, and with a little digging, I found him, an architect at a well-known design firm downtown. Handsome in a quiet, understated way, his photos radiated decency, family man vibes. I didn't know him, but I knew one thing for sure. He deserved to know the truth. Of course, I couldn't just call him up and blurt out, "Your wife is sleeping with my husband." I needed something smarter than that. That's when the idea struck me. A business dinner invitation. It was the perfect cover. I worked at a university. I had every reason to reach out about guest speaking opportunities. So I drafted an email. Formal, polite, professional. I praised his firm's latest eco-friendly office project and asked if he'd be willing to meet and discuss the possibility of giving a guest lecture. I suggested dinner at the exact same restaurant, same date, same time. Friday, 7:30 p.m. at Lumina. I hit send and waited. 2 hours later, I got a reply. Dear Professor Carter, thank you so much for the invitation. I'd be happy to meet and discuss further. Friday at Lumina sounds perfect. Looking forward to it. I sat back in my chair, heart racing, but steady. The trap was set. No screaming matches, no crying fits. Just quiet, devastating truth. Exactly how I wanted it. Friday came faster than I expected. I spent the whole day with a knot in my stomach. But when evening rolled around, something inside me clicked into place. I wasn't nervous anymore. I was ready. I chose my outfit carefully. A deep emerald green dress Mark had once dismissed as too bold for dinner dates. I wore it anyway, pairing it with nude heels and a simple gold bracelet. My makeup was understated but polished. My hair swept into a sleek bun. I wasn't dressing for Mark, I was dressing for myself. For battle, I arrived at Lumina 15 minutes early. The maitre d' led me to my table just as I'd requested, by the window, directly next to the table Mark had reserved. The lighting was soft, the clinking of silverware delicate, violins playing faintly in the background. I ordered a martini and waited, feigning interest in the menu, while my heart beat like a drum dot at exactly 7.25. Daniel Mitchell arrived. He looked every bit the professional. Dark suit, pressed shirt, polished shoes, and a calm confidence. He spotted me quickly and came over with a warm handshake. "Professor Carter, thank you for inviting me," he said, smiling. "Rachel, please," I replied, gesturing to the chair across from me. "And thank you for making time on such short notice." We talked easily at first. Architecture, my students. His recent projects, he was gracious and sharp, and I almost felt a pang of guilt for dragging him into this, but only almost. My eyes flicked constantly to the entrance, and then, right on cue, they appeared. Mark, wearing the gray blazer I had given him for our anniversary last year, his hand lightly resting on the small of Sabrina's back. She wore a slinky red dress, her blonde hair perfectly curled. They looked smug, like they were starring in their own private romance movie, oblivious to the fact that the plot was about to twist in ways they couldn't imagine. My pulse hammered, but my face stayed perfectly composed. "You were saying about the River Point project," prompted Daniel, my voice light, though every part of me was laser-focused on Mark and Sabrina. They were seated. Close, so close, I could hear their laughter, the low murmur of their flirty conversation, the way Mark's voice dropped when he leaned in close to her. It was like watching a scene in A, and yet the betrayal still burned freshly in my chest. Then it happened. Mark turned. Slightly, his eyes scanning the room lazily until they landed on me. His entire body stiffened, his face drained of color. His eyes locked onto mine like he was seeing a ghost. And then, panic. Pure, raw panic. Sabrina noticed the shift and followed his gaze. Her smile crumbled the instant she saw me. Mark's hand, which had been resting on the table, curled into a fist. He looked like he wanted to sink into the floor. Sabrina, on the other hand, went as rigid as a statue, her eyes darting nervously between me and Daniel. "Rachel," Mark stammered, his voice cracking under the weight of sheer disbelief. "What? What are you doing here?" I smiled, slow and measured, as if this were the most ordinary coincidence in the world. "Oh, hi Mark, what a surprise, seeing you here of all places." I turned to Daniel, my tone breezy. "Daniel, meet Mark, my husband." Daniel's polite smile froze. His eyes flicked from Mark to me, then to Sabrina and back again. The puzzle pieces starting to snap together in his mind. I saw his throat bob as he swallowed hard, realization dawning slowly and painfully. And Sabrina. God, she looked like she was about to bolt. Her eyes darted toward the exit. Her lips slightly parted, but no words came out. The table fell into a tense silence, thick and suffocating. I could feel the tension vibrating in the air between us, like a taut wire seconds from snapping. Finally, I rose to my feet with practiced grace. "Excuse me," I said softly, my tone razor sharp. Beneath the politeness, I need to use the ladies' room. I walked away, heels tapping rhythmically against the marble floor, my heart pounding but my steps steady. As I reached the restroom, I allowed myself a single deep breath. I had set the stage, and now it was time to watch the play unfold. I didn't hide in the restroom for long, just enough to let the tension build like a boiling pot left on the stove. I checked my reflection in the mirror, face composed, eyes sharp, and took a deep breath before stepping out. I didn't even have to look for her. Sabrina was already there, waiting by the door, her face pale and her hands trembling slightly as she clutched her tiny clutch bag. Rachel, she whispered, her voice thin and shaky. Please, can we talk? Not here. I tilted my head slightly, studying her. Up close. She didn't look like the confident woman who had sauntered in with my husband 20 minutes ago. Now she looked like a cornered animal. Why not here, Sabrina? I asked, my voice quiet but laced with steel. Isn't this the perfect setting? Candlelight, wine, soft music, very romantic. She winced, her eyes darting around as if searching for an escape route. It's not what you think, she stammered. I didn't mean for it to get this far. I was in a bad place. And Mark? I held up a hand, cutting her off. Save it. I'm not here for excuses. I'm here for clarity. And Daniel deserves the same, don't you think? Her eyes widened in horror. No, please, Rachel, don't drag him into this. Doesn't know anything. That's the problem, I replied smoothly. But he's about to. At that moment, Mark appeared behind her, his face tight with panic, his eyes locking onto mine. Rachel, please, he said urgently, grabbing her arm and pulling her slightly back. Let's just talk, okay? Somewhere private. This isn't the time or place. I crossed my arms, my gaze icy. Oh, now you want privacy. That's rich coming from the man who made a public spectacle out of betrayal. Before either of them could respond, I turned and walked back toward our tables. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat, but my steps were steady. I spotted Daniel still sitting, brows furrowed in confusion and concern. His eyes lit up with relief when he saw me approaching. Everything okay? He asked, rising slightly from his chair. I didn't answer him right away. Instead, I glanced at Mark and Sabrina, who were frozen a few steps away, unsure whether to stay or run. Daniel, I said, my voice clear but soft, there's something you need to know. Mark's face turned a shade of gray I'd never seen before. Sabrina clutched his arm, her lips moving in silent pleading. Daniel looked at me, his eyes narrowing in growing suspicion. What is it? I took a breath and spoke slowly, each word deliberate. This is Mark, my husband, and that's Sabrina, your wife. They've been having an affair. The words landed like a grenade in the middle of our table. Daniel's face went slack with shock, his eyes darting between me, Mark, and Sabrina. For a moment, no one said a thing. The clinking of cutlery and quiet murmur of other diners seemed a world away. Sabrina covered her mouth with her hand, her eyes brimming with tears. Mark looked down, utterly defeated. Daniel just stood there, frozen, his face a mask of disbelief and pain. I don't understand. Daniel finally managed to say, his voice breaking. Sabrina, is this true? She started sobbing then, grabbing his arm, her words tumbling out in messy fragments. I'm so sorry, Daniel. I never meant to hurt you. I made a mistake. He stepped back from her like she was on fire, shaking his head, breathing ragged. His eyes glistened with tears that he refused to let fall. Mark, ever the coward, tried to salvage what was left of his dignity. Rachel, please, let's not do this here. We can figure this out. We can fix it. I turned to him, my voice calm, but razor sharp. Mark, the moment you decided to betray me, you broke something that can't be fixed. This, I gestured between all of us, is the truth, and no amount of begging will change that. Daniel sank back down into his chair, staring blankly at the tablecloth, like it held all the answers. Sabrina stood frozen, silent tears streaming down her cheeks. I looked at all of them, my heart oddly calm now. The worst was out in the open. No more. Secrets. No more lies. Dinner's still on you, Mark, I said quietly, grabbing my purse. Seems only fair considering. And with that, I turned on my heel and walked out of Lumina. My head high, my heels clicking confidently against the marble. For the first time in a long, long while, I felt free. The days that followed were strange, eerily quiet, almost like my life had hit a pause button. After years of routine uncertainty, suddenly everything felt empty, but not the kind of empty that swallows you whole. It was a different kind, a clearing, a space where I could finally breathe. Mark, of course, tried everything. Texts, calls, flowers delivered to my office with saccharine notes, like please, forgive me and I'll do anything to make this right. But I didn't respond. I had nothing left to say. He had spoken loud and clear with his actions. Hey, and I'd answered with mine. I moved out within 2 weeks, found a cozy apartment not far from campus. A small place, but mine. The first night alone there, I sat on the floor with a glass of wine, surrounded by unpacked boxes, and stared out at the Boston skyline. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for someone to come home. I was home. But healing isn't linear. There were nights I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment, every lie. There were mornings when the silence in my apartment felt too heavy. And there were flashes of anger, sharp and hot, at myself for not seeing it sooner, for wasting so much time on a man who didn't deserve it. Surprisingly, the person who checked in on me most wasn't my best friend or my sister. It was Daniel. A week after that night at Lumina, he sent a simple text. Just wanted to say, I hope you're holding up okay. I stared at the message for a long moment before replying. One day at a time? You? Same, he wrote back. And just like that, we started talking. Not every day, not always about the mess we'd both been left with, but enough to remind each other we weren't alone. A month later, we met for coffee. No pressure, no expectations. Just two people sitting across from each other, bonded by shared betrayal, but also by something to respect. Daniel told me he'd filed for divorce. I nodded, telling him I had to. There was no drama in it anymore, just acceptance. Two lives taking separate, necessary paths. Over time, those coffee meets became a quiet ritual. Some weekends we'd talk for hours. Other times we sat in comfortable silence, sipping our drinks, watching the world go by. There was something healing about that. Being with someone who understood without needing everything explained. Life slowly began to stitch itself back together. I threw myself into teaching, cup photography, a hobby I'd abandoned long ago, and found small joys in things I'd once overlooked. Morning walks, fresh flowers on my dining table. It's the soft hum of my apartment at night. One evening, after a guest lecture Daniel gave at my university, we grabbed pizza and sat on the steps of the library, watching the sunset paint the sky. We talked about everything and nothing, and somewhere in between I realized I was smiling without forcing it. Really smiling. He looked at me for a long moment and said, "You know, Rachel, you're one of the strongest people I've ever met." I laughed softly. I don't feel strong most days. He shook his head. Strength isn't about never falling apart. It's about rebuilding after you do. I let his words settle in. For the first time, I believed him. A year passed, almost to the day. Since that night at Lumina. Life had shifted in ways I never imagined. I had signed the divorce papers, packed up old memories, and in many ways started over. But the strange thing was, it didn't feel like starting over. It felt like stepping into the life I was always meant to have. The one I had unknowingly put on hold for far too long. One afternoon, my university hosted a retirement celebration. For one of my mentors, I arrived early, wearing a simple navy dress and my mother's pearl earrings. The room was filled with warm laughter, clinking glasses, and the kind of ease that comes from familiar faces. And then I saw him not Mark. He stood by the wine table, alone, a little thinner, a little grayer at the temples. His usual confident posture seemed softer, like the weight of the past year had pressed down on him in ways even he couldn't hide. We locked eyes briefly. He approached, his smile tentative. "Rachel," he said, his voice quieter than I remembered. "You look? Well, thanks," I replied, keeping my tone neutral but polite. He hesitated, as if searching for the right words. "I owe you an apology, a real one, not just for what I did, but for how long I took you for granted." I nodded slowly. No anger left in me. Thank you, Mark. I hope you found your own peace. He gave a small, sad smile, still working on it. Before I could reply, another voice joined us. Warm, familiar. Everything okay here? Daniel. He appeared beside me, relaxed and easy, a quiet presence that felt safe. I glanced at him and smiled, then turned back to Mark. Yes, I said simply. Everything's just fine. Mark looked at Daniel, then back at me. Understanding flickered in his eyes, and he nodded. Take care of yourself, Rachel. You too, I replied. And that was it. A full circle moment. No drama, no fireworks, just closure. The kind that leaves you lighter, freer. Later that night, Daniel and I walked along the river, the city lights reflecting off the water in shimmering gold. He took my hand gently. No rush, no pressure, just present. I looked over at him, at the man who had quietly become my friend, my confidant, and maybe, just maybe, something more. You know, I said softly, squeezing his hand. There was a time I thought betrayal was the end of my story. He looked at me with that calm, steady gaze of his. And now? I smiled, eyes on the water. Now I know it was just the beginning. We walked on, step by step, into a future we weren't rushing to define. And for the first time in a long while, I wasn't afraid of what came next, because I wasn't the same woman who had once been broken. I was Rachel Carter, strong, steady, and finally, free.